Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're going to answer a viewer's question today, but we're also going to do a little bit of a quick education here on bearings. And I thought I would start by introducing you to the bearing itself, and then we can talk a little bit about the question. So the question that I got on my forum was, what is the size of the bearing for the Penn 4400 SS? And are the three bearings the same? And of course you can try and reach various parts suppliers and the like Boca Bearing, or perhaps the Penn parts distributor mysticparts.com, and they have very helpful resources there that can usually guide you through that. You can pull a schematic on the fishing reel, and that schematic will also show you part numbers, and if all three bearings have the same part number, then there's a good likelihood that those are the same, if you couldn't find that resource. And then finally, you can generally order bearings online, and a lot of bearings are interchangeable, so don't think because you have a particular reel that unless you can find the supplier that's going to provide you a bearing for a Mitchell reel, for example, or a Penn reel or a Shimano, that's the only place that you can get them. Interestingly enough, a viewer of mine sent me a pack of bearings that he bought from a hobby shop. The bearings were intended for these radio-controlled cars, remote-control cars, RC cars, if you will, and they also fit the Mitchell 302. Well, how did he do that, and how did he know that that was the case? Well, he knew it because he had the size and dimensions of it. In a moment, we'll be able to show you just how to get those so that you can order those. Before I get started too much further, I want to take a moment to thank our first responders and essential personnel and all the folks that are involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. That includes police, fire, rescue, EMT, all of the uniformed services, of course, that we've come to know. But it also involves the people on the front lines, like our medical workers in the hospitals and the doctor's offices and the nursing home and long care facilities, as well as the folks that are essential to us just kind of getting through this, our food delivery people, our transportation workers and the like. Thank you for all it is that you do. Well, first of all, the subject of bearings comes up. It's kind of an interesting one. You'll always see different types of bearings out there. You'll see three primary types. You'll see what's just simply an open bearing, where you can see the ball bearings in there. You'll see a shielded bearing. That means it has a piece of metal that's covering those ball bearings, and those shielded bearings will keep out some dirt and contaminants that the other more open one does not. And then you'll have a sealed bearing, and the sealed bearings is going to keep everything out. It's you don't lubricate these. They're pretty much self-contained units. They don't get dirty. Supposedly the greases and oils inside don't leak. And in price points, you'll see these would be the most expensive, the sealed, and then the shielded would be second, and then the open bearings third. You also have a couple of different types of components in the bearings. We won't get into them very much today, but you can get a ceramic bearing, which is ceramic ball bearings. They're much smoother than the stainless bearings. The cheapest bearings are the steel bearings. The problem that you have with steel bearings is that they rust. As they rust, they pit, and as they pit, they become more noisy and less operable. And here's an example of that. You can just hear it. The ball bearings are kind of going their own little way, and the reel needs to have that replaced. Well, this is a vintage reel. We're going to do this one day, but this is a vintage reel. Where in the world would you get the bearings, and how would you know what bearings to get? Well, bearings are used or the way to order the bearings is by sizing. The sizing has three different types of numbers to them. It has an outside diameter, which is this point. It has the inside diameter, which is the inner ring, and it has a height. And I've seen a lot of reels come in, not a lot, but I've seen reels come in where a person has attempted to replace a bearing, and like, even though this one looks like it's the same as this, that inner race is wider than this one is, and the whole bearing is just a hair wider. Well, when you go to install the wrong bearing in a reel, either the bearing won't perform properly. For example, if this one was replacing this one, well, you probably wouldn't get it over the pinion shaft to begin with. But if you tried to put this one on here, you would have play inside for the pinion gear that it's riding on, or the main gear stud that it's riding on, and that play would be ineffective. And finally, one more word before we go too much further. This is often called a bearing. It's a roller bearing. It's the anti-reverse bearing that you'll find in a fishing reel. And sometimes you'll see 4+1. It'll tell you it's 5 bearings, 4+1. Well, this is a one-way clutch. It has a series of rollers inside of it. If I can take this out for a moment. It has a series of rollers inside that are friction rollers. They compress against the ferrule that rides on the clutch. And that only goes in one direction. So it'll allow the reel to spin this way. As soon as you go to back it off, it's going to grab the ferrule and it's going to hold that firm. That's called the instant anti-reverse bearing. Didn't want to miss that. Okay, so my viewer asked a question. He said, are the bearings in the 4400, all 3 of them, are they the same size? Because typically sometimes they're not. Some of the earlier spin fishers used a very big bearing up top, and it's probably not it, but used the big bearing up top and then use smaller bearings in the side case. Well, he wants to know in the 4400 if they're all the same, and what's the dimensions of them, and how do I go about ordering them. So let's take them. In the case of the 4400, all 3 of these bearings are the same. This is a 4300 bearing. I just had a reel open, so I was able to confirm that. How do you know what it is in terms of the sizing of the bearing? Well, the best way to do that is to use a caliper. I get mine turned on here, interestingly enough. But I have a digital caliper. It runs maybe about $30. But when you're into repairing reels, it's an invaluable asset, particularly as you get to an old reel like the one that I just showed you. In that case, that bearing is going to need to be replaced, and the only way I'm going to be able to find that bearing is by measurements. This caliper has a millimeter set, and it also has an inches set. You can choose and find your way. If the site you're ordering from is in inches, you can do the inches. Most of the sites and bearings today are in millimeters, and you can use that. It also has a convenient on-off switch that's going to enable you to work with that. Save the battery. All right, so 3 measures. The first one you'll see generally is the outside diameter. So I'm going to put that in the jaw just like that. I'm going to measure it, and I know it's upside down here, of course. And this one reads 15.97 is the OD, and you can round that up to 16. You're really dealing in hundredths of a millimeter at that point. So the OD on the Penn 4400 is 16 millimeters. You can use the inside forks here for the ID, the inside diameter. Simply insert it in the hole and then back it off until you can't move it any longer. I'm trying to be ginger about that. The inside diameter on this one reads 7.95. So that's 8 millimeters inside. So we have 16 outside, 8 inside, and then you want the width of this. So the width is measured by clamping down that way. This shows 4.98 or 5 millimeters. So you're looking for the bearing that is 16 by 8 by 5. And if you have any questions, the source that you are ordering from may not ask you which order the measurements are. In other words, they might ask for the OD and then the width and then the ID. So just be specific when you're ordering. In this case, you'd say I have an OD of 16, an ID of 8, enable you to get the bearings that you needed. So I hope that was helpful. I try to provide those tips so that folks that are working on reels can learn from that and can be successful in restoring their reel. So if you like this kind of information, please subscribe to my channel. And if you subscribe to my channel, please hit the notification button. That will help you to see the videos that I post. If you like the video, please indicate that. And if you have a question, like this viewer did, relative to bearings, then leave that in the comments section. I'll be happy to try and respond to that for you. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.